Okay, awesome. Okay, so it's me, Simon. I'm here, and I'm here with my buddy Kris, fellow Saratogian, fellow tech guy, a little more technical than me for sure. And Kris has agreed to do a series of conversations with me about the Kixx open source web development web application platform that I've made a couple of other pieces of content about. So Kris, just let me say thank you. I'm pretty stoked about the project, pretty stoked about having a chance to talk to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited.
So I wonder, maybe let's just start at the beginning. Like when you think about Kixx, like where did this idea come from? Did it come out of like a particular problem or a particular time in your life? Yeah, let's just start there.
Yeah, an interesting set of problems and an interesting time. I think I was getting into web development probably for the third time, around 2008, 2009, and I was making a career change at the same time. So I was developing a lot of websites, really for pennies, but I was doing a lot of them, and trying to do them quickly. And the sort of like the go-to at the time was WordPress. So most
Hmm.
of the stuff that I did in WordPress, but it did occur to me that there were two sorts of websites that I was working on and customers that I was working with, that didn't fit well into the WordPress. So one was just really simple brochure type websites, that really didn't need content updates. There was really small stuff, and I could almost write HTML faster for those websites by hand,
Yeah.
than I could spin up a WordPress instance. So that was kind of interesting. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's some that were more complicated and they were really hard to implement with custom post types. So basically, I was trying to like drive a square peg into the MySQL round hole,
Hmm. Hmm.
doing things like, I mean, one of the ones that I was working on at the time was a coupon website. So it was a local newspaper that wanted to digitize their product, and they wanted to offer coupons, to local establishments, local businesses in the
Right.
area, online. And so WordPress was kind of a natural choice. It was really the only thing we had actually available at the time, that I knew how to work with. But we couldn't really get it to fit. We ended up fitting the product to WordPress rather than building the product
Mm.
initially as we had envisioned it.
Got
Um,
it.
so so then I started working on, a framework, um, that I thought could get us there. In parallel, there was work already going on in Rails, Ruby on Rails, and I
Hmm.
didn't get introduced to Ruby on Rails until probably 2010 or 2011. And that point, kind of abandoned what I was doing, which I called it Kixx at the time in 2008. Kind of abandoned that, and started working more in Ruby on Rails for
Right.
the more complex, web development projects.
And so
Yeah,
part of the
just kind of
problem
set it
space
aside
with
for
like
a while.
it was like this, it isn't just one end or the other. It sounds like both the very simple stuff was not quite within your like desirable like pace, I guess, but also like the really complicated, like really bespoke stuff. So that like WordPress was serving this kind of large middle space, but for like small things, it was too much, right? It was taking too long and it was a little bit overburdened maybe. But then at
Yeah.
the even higher end, suddenly it's like, oh, actually now we have to change the way that we're thinking about our solution to fit the tools that we have, as opposed to sort of engaging fully in like the dream.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
exactly. The on the simple side of things, that problem got solved with, static site builders. I don't know, it probably came around in 2012. I'm sure there were earlier versions than that, but I remember one we were working with pretty early on called Jekyll, which was also in Ruby, I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, that was awesome just to be able to like assemble a group of markdown files with a little bit of HTML, and it would spit out this, pretty good site. And you could have as many pages in that simple site as you could write markdown files.
Hmm.
So that was a really interesting sort of development, and I kind of put that in my back pocket to think about it for a while. And I've been building personal websites and blogs using static site builders probably since then. But then as my career transitioned over into, the video game industry,
Hmm.
we needed ways to stand up web services like really rapidly. Um, and so we started working more and more with Node.js, which allowed us to do it. We could do it. We could scale Node to some pretty high numbers um, for like millions of users, hundreds of thousands of concurrents for the video game stuff that we were working on. And we ended up we didn't really find a framework on the for the team that I was working with. We didn't really find a framework that worked well within Node.
Hmm.
Uh, and so we sort of developed our own. Express is probably the most popular one, but didn't have it didn't have the sorts of things that we would have wanted more closely to like Ruby on Rails or something like that.
Right.
So we started working more heavily in that environment, and that's where Kixx kind of took another step forward, um, and it really kind of consolidated around the Node.js server side JavaScript environment, and extending the capabilities of the platform in ways that closer to Ruby on Rails and away from Express a little bit.
Hmm. Hmm. And when did it like become a thing that you were using as a tool that you were using to like build things to show to other people on the internet? Like, do you remember the first thing you built with Kix?
Yeah, well, so the interesting thing is it was always for side projects or even projects at work, and like
Hmm.
the outcome was always the focal point, not the framework that was used to
Okay.
build it.
Oh,
Which is good, which is interesting. I think when I was working in the gaming industry, we used it for a couple of projects, but it was just to stand things up really quickly and get moving fast on something that ultimately we would deliver for the client, and then it would kind of be forgotten about. But then I was working on some side projects, just some what do you call it? The not work for hire, but um, what's the term I'm thinking of? Doing something for free,
pro bono.
pro bono. There we go.
Mm,
Yeah.
there you go.
I was doing some pro bono work for some things that I was really passionate about. One of them was an avalanche on conditions and tracking mobile app. It wasn't a mobile app; it was a web application, but
Hmm.
primarily used for on mobile devices.
Right.
In the Adirondack Mountains. Um, and that was a really great use case for it actually. So I did some more work on Kixx at that point, um, and then just started rapidly going through a bunch of interesting little projects that I was working on at the time. Both my kids play hockey, so we were doing some stuff with the hockey team. We ride mountain bikes, so we were doing some stuff with mountain biking and related websites. But then at my work on Disney, we had some
Yeah.
internal tooling that we wanted to build. Um, and like again, like just sort of like ran into a case where all the existing tool building platforms that were out there didn't really fit the use case.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I used Kixx for a couple of internal projects and got those off the ground really rapidly. In that case, we were running them in a serverless environment, which is really interesting. It was the first time I had ever done that.
Yeah. So one of the things I think that you're describing here that I think is really interesting, and a lot of folks have had this experience too, or at least are aware of this experience, which is you went from this being part of the toolbox to kind of accomplish and build other things and sort of a journey, right? A route to get there. And now you've sort of turned your attention to it as itself, right? To a thing in itself. Like, oh, this could
Yeah.
be a product, this could be a platform, this could be sort of an entire open source offering. What was that? Well, like, what was that like? Like, what led you to sort of look back onto the tool?
Yeah. Well, I think I always wanted it to get to that point.
Yeah.
At some point, like that's kind of like right from the inception. Is like it would be really great if we could do this. And for a lot of different reasons, like I just felt like we needed it. I felt like it fit into a spot where the other frameworks didn't always cover. But the work that I was doing with it was always more important and more pressing than actually like working on an open source project full time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah. I get
um,
that.
I think through 2024, 2025, there's just some macro changes in the web in
Mm,
general, that just started to irk me in a way. It's like it just didn't seem like we were putting out quality software the way we had been, for
yeah.
the last 15 years. It seemed like there's just like massive amounts of client side JavaScript. Web pages just seem to be getting heavier and heavier every year. You find more and more bugs in the websites and web applications that you use. Um, and and having worked on them, both like at large scale and small scale, like, I really got an appreciation for, going, kind of looking, not necessarily moving backwards, but at least drawing some inspiration from the earlier days of the web where we just simply delivered HTML, and we rendered websites, and that's how you interacted with it. A page reload, doesn't really take that long. There's, you know,
Mhm.
there's an
Mhm.
argument that, pages need to be dynamic and dynamically loaded with all this JavaScript, but then we download, hundreds of megabytes of JavaScript that take, 20 or 30 seconds to parse and, interpret in the browser. Yeah, let's just write HTML for most of the applications that we can work with can do that. Um, and they'll be just fine. Like we don't need these massive complex JavaScript ecosystems that are really hard to work with.
Yeah.
So that was a driver. The other driver that was really unexpected for me was the development of, AI and large language
Mm,
models, LLMs.
yeah.
That kind of came in through the side door in an unexpected way, um, where I had done some experimentation with, writing code with LLMs, and just wasn't getting good results. I was really like not impressed with it. So there's things about artificial intelligence generally that I just don't like. I don't like the idea of, generating even. I mean, we have enough garbage code out there today, i- in the
Yeah.
in the web. We don't need to be generating, heaps more of it. Like now we have machines that can, 10x the amount of junk code that we deliver. So that was kind of discouraging. And then there's a massive environmental impact. It's just to
Right.
generate code, we need to consume all the CPU power. It just seems super wasteful.
Yeah.
Um,
For sure.
but so I kind of set the whole like AI coding thing aside for a little bit, and then came back to it, when, Anthropic released Claude Code.
Hmm.
So Claude Code is, it's a command line tool that you can use to generate software. And I was really impressed. And I think I was impressed because it was the first time that I had seen like one of these large language model companies, with the large frontier models, really put an effort into building a product that had like real world application capabilities, and
Mm,
and was targeted to software developers, not just like a chat interface for the general public, but a tool built specifically for software developers. And kind of like digging into Claude Code, I could see how it worked, and started to understand how, it gave tokens, language tokens into the
right.
LLM, how the LLM interpreted those and spit them back out. And so I started doing some tests, with Kixx to see like if you give an LLM a much smaller context that's more tightly defined,
Hmm.
instead of the entire internet. Of course, these frontier models, they're going to consume the entire internet anyway. But
Right.
if for the specific tasks that you give it, you can give it a limited context to work within. And
Hmm.
I spent a few days writing up some documentation about some of the key points of how Kixx works, how it interacts with a database, what the data models look like,
Hmm.
how we render a UI in HTML instead of the JavaScript libraries. Um, and it was incredible. Like once I gave it the documentation, the LLM could ingest it with just a small portion of its context, because it didn't have to ingest the entire project,
Right.
just the documentation that I wrote for it. Um, and it could output, really great, concise code incredibly fast.
That's really
And so
interesting.
that was kind of mind blowing. I just realized that if we're really going to take advantage of simplifying of AI and
Mhm.
simplify the web as an ecosystem simultaneously, um, it could work. Like most things in software, the huge complex problems end up being simple in hindsight. But
Yeah.
the ecosystem taken as a whole is complex. But yeah, you boil it down and it's really incredible.
Well, it's also really interesting, a really interesting idea. A lot of what you've said so far here, I'm hearing the themes emerge of simplicity and also speed. And it is kind of interesting and a little bit against what I see at least as like the countervailing perception of AI, which is like it's big, right? It's going to consume everything. It like reads the entire internet. It consumes all social media. Like and sort of what you're weaving together here is actually a little bit of a push in the other direction, which is actually we're going to hyper focus what this AI is thinking about. And we're going to really reduce that context just to the things that we're trying to get done. And then from that, you gain that simplicity, you gain that speed kind of on the back end, as well as environmental benefits, as well as sort of more human engagement, which is, of course, good as a human. That's what I would prefer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if my how unique my career is to everyone else's, but I've seen that pattern play out multiple
Mhm.
times where we kind of like oversolve a problem in the technical world to the point where it's just too heavy to work with anymore, and then simplify it. And maybe that's the natural way of things. I don't know.
Mm.
But I think it's really exciting now because I think we have an opportunity. Every time there's a big technological shift, we have an opportunity to revisit a lot of the things that we do, um, and think of better ways of doing it. And I think I'm really exciting as I'm starting to see you know, uh, developers, engineers, designers, and artists, just everyone who builds things on the web, sort of look back and be like, let's take some inspiration. I'm seeing things like blog rolls.
Mhm.
There's some blog
Yeah.
rolls that I follow. It's just a lot of fun to see stuff like that. People building their own sort of like micro blogging services on the Fediverse protocols, which is really exciting. I mean, you can just do that stuff. You don't need permission, and it can all work together.
Well,
And
It,
it's
it would
really
be it is
simple.
interesting, right? Like the potential and like future of AI today feels so much like we're like speeding up toward the dead internet, right? Like we've already been scamming one another and kind of creating garbage content on the internet, and now it's happening way faster, right? And it's becoming
Yeah,
inscrutable. And a little bit, it does feel like we're coming to a place where almost like small communities, like what we saw at early internet, making things for your friends and not trying to monetize every inch of the internet kind of feels like maybe that's a potential outcome, right? Like that's my optimistic view is if we accelerate toward the dead internet, it's going to really help these smaller, older ways of thinking about it and engaging with it in like a more genuinely social way. Like that feels like a potential
yeah,
outcome there. I feel optimistic about.
yeah. Me too. And I feel like even if we can't get all of it, it's something worth driving towards. If we just a little bit is great.
Yeah, doing our
Um,
little part right here, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
Let me ask though, like if folks want to learn more about the project, learn more about you, like what's the first step? Where should we send folks for that?
I have a website that I try to keep up with. I've been doing a lot of work on the framework lately, so I don't spend a lot of time in it. But I have a website at chriswalker.me,
Hmm.
uh, and then the Kixx framework can be found at kixx.dev, kix.dev, and there's links there to the GitHub repo.
Perfect. And there's a quick start guide on the GitHub as as I'm working my way through myself. And I think this is probably the first of many conversations that we're going to have. So stay
Awesome.
tuned, and I feel stoked about it. Thank you, Kris.
Thanks, Simon.